From time to time, I refer to 6 different types of areas of low pressure that form out of northeastern Asia. Now, it's nice to know what these are because climatologically speaking, they tend to take very similar paths. So I want to share this video with you. Now, keep in mind, it's about 10 years old, but the information is definitely still valid. So hopefully you find it useful and let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future.
We have these 6 right here, starting with the Lake Baikal, the Manchurian, the Yellow Sea, South Mongolian, Taiwan, and the Shanghai Low. All of them really get their name from their origin, but we're going to run right through and kind of break down each and every one of these, and it's going to give you a better perspective on how you forecast out here in the Western Pacific and East Asia, and some of the general rules of forecasting some of these baroclinic and mid-latitude lows here. So moving on to the next slide here, we're going to show you the seasonal storm track zone. Numerous extratropical low pressure systems develop and dissipate in the northern hemisphere, of course, but some of these actually start out into the Atlantic, move over the Asian continent, and eventually move over towards the Western Pacific. So here is some of the seasonal storm tracks, though, starting with the Yellow Sea, Shanghai, and Taiwan Low are all southern storm tracks that all spin off of numerous atmospheric impulses over the Asian continent here. So here's your migratory lows, though. Basically, the 6 of these here, just showing their basic tracks here. You have a legend right in here showing the Manchurian Low farther up north, Lake Baikal, South Mongolian. A little bit farther to the south here, you have an overlap of the Shanghai and Yellow Sea Low, and to the south, though, Taiwan Low, which really just kind of starts in the vicinity of Taiwan, of course. So showing the northern lows, though, Lake Baikal, Manchurian, and the South Mongolian Low all normally generate in China and southern Russia and leave their source regions here, and basically all formed by shortwave troughs transiting the source region. So basically you kind of have a weak low pressure there up in Russia, and you have a shortwave trough in the upper level, so that kind of picks it up and starts to move it off towards the west here. So let's start actually with the Lake Baikal Low, actually get into the specific lows and kind of break them down here. This does develop in the vicinity of Lake Baikal, you know, one of the deepest freshwater lakes in the world up in this region right here. And basically it starts to move off towards the southeast, moving about 22 knots, so a pretty fast low actually. It tracks through the La Perouse Strait, though, eventually. Basically, that is the strait here just north of Hokkaido. And really not really have too much weather associated with this low until it gets out into open waters here, basically just south of the Sea of Ashtok, and basically starts to occlude here. And as you can see, though, after it moves off and towards that region, though, that's when really the most of the weather forms out of it. So overall, though, not really a big weather producer for Korea and Japan with this system. Now we're showing the Manchurian Low. This develops over Manchuria, tracks to over the Sakhalin Islands, and occurs mainly in autumn and spring. But this low, very weak, very weather associated with it, and it actually tracks really far north of major population areas here. So let's actually go on to the next low, and this is the South Mongolian Low, and this one moves a little bit farther south than the other two, actually tracks over North Korea here and into the Sea of Japan, and brings a little more weather throughout the region, especially Korea definitely sees some precipitation due to the cold front out of this. But one thing to note, though, this one does occasionally split after it passes near Honshu, and you can see up in here it kind of splits and basically starts to reform to the south and then eventually up towards the northeast here. And on the next slide here, though, we start to see the southern lows basically form in central and southern China, track east into the Sea of Japan, and these lows can produce basically extensive weather, and these are your wetter lows and your ones that bring you more severe weather. The other ones basically form sometimes in the winter, but are much drier than these ones. Now, as we can see on these ones, starting with the Yellow Sea Low, it develops during the summer and autumn, originates in the area of the Shanghai and Osan, and then tracks northeast over Korea and the Sea of Japan. So basically, this is a much deeper weather maker, can produce a double I low, as we noted with the last low. Basically, this breaks up over the Japanese Alps and occasionally sometimes can reform south of Honshu here, but this produces strong southwest southwest wind over eastern Japan if no double eye develops, and that really means that the tighter gradient is actually going to be right in this region. Now, if you do have a double eye develop, basically that means that you're going to have a very wide gradient throughout here. So definitely one thing to note, if you see one of these systems moving off toward the northeast and you don't have that double low pressure center developing, you're really going to see a very tight gradient and much stronger wind. And here with the Shanghai Low, now this one's really the weather maker for much of Japan. This occurs mainly in the spring and can rapidly intensify as it moves over the Kuroshio Current, which, as you can see on one of our other videos here, basically lingers here just south of Honshu. Now this one moves about 20 knots and really is the big weather maker, especially for the Tokyo Plain right in here and basically the east coast of Honshu. As it tracks off to the northeast, you kind of get the warm frontal effect, but then as it starts to occlude here, you get the wraparound effect with the occlusion. So definitely a weather maker with this low. Moving on though to the next one here, we have the Taiwan Low. Now this one generates over China, usually in the autumn and through the spring. So it's really a winter low. Now this usually forms off the stationary front, which it kind of lingers right down here near Taiwan, sometimes especially in the spring and the fall. And if this low tracks north of 32 degrees north, you're going to expect widespread precipitation throughout much of Japan. So this can be a potent low if it develops strong enough and eventually moves off to the northeast. But one thing to note though, this is one of those lows that you really do tend to see develop off this stationary front that usually lingers here just south of Japan. So let's take some of this knowledge and put it into action here as we go on to the next slide here. Just basically showing all these lows, and if you want to just take your time, pause this, you can look through it. But let's just look at the last slide here showing basically where these lows are. So let's just do a quick recap. Lake Baikal, Manchurian, Shanghai, Yellow Sea, the Taiwan Low, and the South Mongolian Low. So now you know, if you ever hear me refer to these specific low pressure systems, you now know what I'm talking about. So I hope you all enjoyed this basically quick overview of all the lows here in the Western Pacific. So if you have any further questions or comments, always feel free to ask me. And also please stay tuned to our daily updates from here at westernpacificweather.com. So have a great day, everyone. Bye.